90 seconds. That's all it took for a life that seemed perfect to shatter. For Elena, pregnant and waiting in her marble-floored mansion, her first son's ultrasound was meant to be a moment of shared joy. But her millionaire husband, Matteo, wouldn't be coming. "I'm closing a deal," he said in a voice cold and distant. But when his mother, Isabel, arrived, her face a grim mask of determination, and insisted on taking her, Elena felt a chilling shiver. This wasn't about a missed appointment. This was about a secret so devastating it was about to unravel everything. A house of secrets, the silence in the house had always felt unsettling to Elena. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the hollow, empty echo of a museum after hours. Every one of her steps on the grand lobby's Italian marble seemed to announce her loneliness. It was a sound that was devoured by the cavernous ceilings and absorbed by the cold modern art Matteo had insisted on buying. Her home, a minimalist masterpiece nestled on a Madrid hillside, felt less like a house and more like a testament to her husband's success. A beautiful, sterile cage. Today, however, a nervous energy buzzed beneath her skin, a happy hum that temporarily filled the void. At 20 weeks pregnant, a soft, promising curve in her belly was finally beginning to show, and she cradled it protectively. This was the day of the ultrasound, the day they would see their baby in vivid detail for the first time. 10 perfect toes, 10 tiny fingers, the day it would all feel irrevocably real. She had laid out her clothes the night before, a soft cashmere dress in a pale blue that complemented the glow she had acquired. In the baby's room, a room she had fought to paint a warm, creamy white instead of the slate gray Matteo's designer had chosen, everything was ready. A tiny pair of booties, a gift from her own mother, rested on the dresser, a poignant symbol of the tiny person who was about to turn her world upside down. Elena glanced at the clock on the sleek digital interface in the kitchen. 10:30 a.m. Matteo should have been home by now. He had promised. No matter what, he had told her, kissing her forehead before leaving 2 days ago for a business trip to London. "I'll be on the 6 a.m. flight. I won't miss seeing our baby for the first time. Nothing is more important." She had believed him. She had chosen to believe him, just as she had chosen to overlook the increasing number of late nights, the tense, hushed phone calls he made in his glass-walled office, and the way his gaze sometimes seemed to pass right through her, his mind a million miles away, doing calculations she couldn't comprehend. He was Matteo della Riva, a young prodigy in the world of tech investment. His pressure was immense, his schedule grueling. That was the price of the life they led, the life he provided for them. At 10:45 a.m., her phone finally rang, showing his name on the screen. A wave of relief washed over her. "Matteo, I was starting to worry. Are you on your way?" she asked, her voice cheerful. The line crackled for a moment before his voice came through, clipped and devoid of warmth. "Elena, listen. Something's come up." Her stomach clenched. "What do you mean? The appointment is at 12. We need to leave soon." "I'm not in Madrid. I'm still in London," he said, and the words hit her with a physical force. "The deal here is at a critical stage. I can't leave. It's a make-or-break moment for the company. I need you to be understanding." Elena sank onto one of the ridiculously uncomfortable bar stools that lined the kitchen island. "You promised, Matteo. You promised this was the one thing you wouldn't miss." Her voice trembled, a pathetic sound in the vast empty room. "Don't be dramatic," he scoffed, a condescending tone that was all too familiar. "It's an ultrasound. They'll give you pictures, won't they? We can look at them together when I get back. This is a €1 billion negotiation, Elena. It requires my full attention. I need you to be understanding." The word felt like a slap. She was always the one being understanding. Understanding about canceled dates, lonely holidays, a life that revolved completely around his relentless ambition. "When will you be back?" she asked quietly. The fight had already left her. "A few days, maybe a week. I don't know. I have to go. They're waiting for me." And with that, the line went dead. She stared at the phone, tears blurring the immaculate view of the city below. He hadn't even apologized. He hadn't asked about the baby. It was just a transaction, a scheduling conflict that could be set aside. The excitement that had filled her morning curdled into a familiar, sour mix of disappointment and loneliness. She felt foolish sitting there in her pretty blue dress, waiting for a man who was never really there. She was thinking of calling the doctor to cancel when the sound of the front doorbell echoed through the house. The security panel showed a black sedan she recognized. It was her mother-in-law, Isabel de la Riva. Elena's heart sank a little further. Isabel was a formidable woman, made of the same expensive, unyielding material as her son. Their interactions were always polite but strained, punctuated by Isabel's thinly veiled assessments of Elena's suitability as a wife for a man like Matteo. Elena let her in and smoothed her dress, wiping her eyes as she walked to the door. She would have to put on a brave face, pretend that Matteo had been called away for a heroic, world-saving reason. But when Isabel walked in, her usually impeccable composure seemed off. Her tailored Chanel suit was perfect, her silver hair was coiffed, but her eyes, the same intense, intelligent blue as Matteo's, held a flicker of something Elena had never seen before. Anxiety. "Elena," she said. Her voice was crisp but lacked its usual icy edge. "Are you ready? I see." "Oh, Isabel, what a surprise," Elena stammered. "Matteo is stuck in London. A last-minute emergency with his deal." She waited for the understanding, yet slightly superior, response. She expected something like, "Of course, my son's work is very important." Instead, Isabel looked at her. Her gaze was intense. "I know. He called me an hour ago." She paused. Her eyes scanned Elena's face, taking in the tear-stained cheeks and the forced smile. "Go get your purse. I'll drive you to your appointment." Elena was stunned. "Oh no, you don't have to do that. I can reschedule." "Nonsense," Isabel interrupted. Her tone left no room for discussion. "You are not missing this appointment, and you are not going alone. We are running late. Let's go." There was an urgency to Isabel's demeanor that was both confusing and alarming. It felt like more than a mother-in-law simply stepping in for her absent son. Something else was happening. A current of tension ran just beneath the surface of this strange, authoritarian invitation, and Elena felt a new wave of unease. She did as she was told. She grabbed her purse from the counter and followed her mother-in-law out of the silent, gilded cage she called home. Why do you think Isabel is so insistent that Elena keeps her appointment? And why does she seem so concerned? The unveiling, the interior of Isabel's Mercedes was the complete opposite of Elena's house. Luxurious, quiet, and comforting. But the atmosphere inside was dense with unspoken words. Isabel drove with a concentrated intensity, her gloved hands gripping the steering wheel, her jaw set. She had offered no further explanation for her sudden appearance, and Elena, as always intimidated, did not dare to ask. She stared out the window at the blurry, passing trees, her mind in a whirlwind of confusion. Why was Isabel so insistent? It was completely out of character. Their relationship was built on a foundation of polite distance. Isabel saw Elena as a beautiful, if somewhat simple, addition to the de la Riva dynasty, a woman to produce an heir and host an impeccable charity gala, not as a confidant. Yet here she was, driving her to a doctor's appointment, with the grim determination of a general leading troops into battle. Matteo is just incredibly focused, Elena said, trying to break the silence and normalize the situation. He gets so absorbed in his work. It's what makes him so successful. Isabel made a sound of disapproval in her throat. Focus is a virtue. Obsession, however, can be a liability. The comment hung in the air, sharp and ambiguous. Before Elena could parse it, Isabel made a sudden turn, veering off the most direct route to the clinic. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, a new spike of anxiety shooting through her. "The doctor's office is on Calle Mayor. We're making a brief stop. There's someone I need to pick up," Isabel said, her eyes fixed on the road. "He will be joining us." "Joining us? For the ultrasound?" Elena's voice rose with disbelief. Who could possibly be joining them? Isabel turned into the parking garage of a sleek, black glass skyscraper in a financial district. She pulled into a reserved spot near the elevators. Not for the ultrasound itself, no, but he needs to be present for the conversation afterward. A conversation? What conversation? Elena's heart was beginning to pound. This was wrong. Everything was wrong. Matteo's cold rejection, Isabel's strange behavior. It was all connected. A puzzle she couldn't begin to solve. "Patience, Elena," Isabel said, though her own seemed to be wearing thin. She tapped an elegant finger on the steering wheel. A moment later, the elevator door opened, and a man in a perfectly tailored gray suit walked toward them. He was in his mid-50s, with a calm, serious face and glasses perched on his nose. Elena recognized him instantly. Ricardo Morales, the De La Riva family's longtime attorney. He had handled the paperwork for their house, a distant, imposing figure she had only met twice. He opened the back door and slid in, the scent of old paper and expensive cologne filling the car. "Elena, it's a pleasure to see you. My congratulations on your pregnancy." "Ricardo," Elena acknowledged. "Thank you for meeting us on such short notice." "Of course," he said. "The circumstances seemed to warrant it." His eyes met Elena's in the rearview mirror, and his expression was one of gentle pity. It was the look of a man who was about to deliver terrible news. Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. "I don't understand," she said. Her voice was trembling. "Why is our lawyer coming to my baby appointment? Did something happen to Matteo?" A new horrifying thought took root. An accident. A medical emergency they were hiding. "Matteo is fine, physically," Isabel said, backing out of the garage and returning to the street. "This is about business. Family business. What does that have to do with me? Or with this?" she asked, her hand instinctively covering her belly. It was Ricardo Morales who answered, his voice calm and measured, a stark contrast to the panic growing in Elena's chest. "Sometimes, Elena, family assets and business become deeply intertwined. Isabel has some concerns about recent decisions Matteo has made. We felt it was prudent to create a clear line of communication." It was the most elegantly evasive non-answer she had ever heard. "Concerns? What kind of concerns?" she insisted, looking at Isabel's rigid profile and Ricardo's reflection in the mirror. Isabel sighed, a long, weary sound. "Matteo has become reckless. He is liquidating assets that have been in this family for generations, trust funds his father established. He's moving large sums of money without consulting anyone. When I questioned him, he became hostile. He told me to trust his genius and to stay out of his affairs. He is under a great deal of pressure." Elena defended him weakly. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. "This goes beyond pressure," Ricardo Morales interrupted gently. "This is erratic behavior. Isabel asked me to look into some of the portfolio companies he's been using. What I've found is opaque, unorthodox, even for a man as aggressive in business as Matteo." He paused. "We believe it's important to ensure that you and the baby are protected, that your futures are secure, regardless of the outcome of his current business." "Protected," secure. The words were legal and sterile, but their implication was terrifying. They were talking as if Matteo were a sinking ship from which they needed to rescue the passengers. The man she was married to, the father of her child, was being discussed as a threat, a liability. Elena rested her head against the cold leather of the seat. The reality of the situation was beginning to dawn. This was not a simple intervention about work-life balance. Isabel and Ricardo Morales suspected something was profoundly wrong with Matteo's business, something that could have catastrophic consequences for the entire family. And they had brought the family lawyer to a prenatal appointment because in their world, a new heir wasn't just a baby. He was an asset that needed to be secured. Do you think Elena and Isabel's alliance is built on a foundation of trust, or just a temporary shared interest? The unthinkable truth, the waiting room of the perinatologist's office was decorated in soothing tones of beige and rose. But to Elena, the place felt charged with a clinical and terrifying tension. Ricardo Morales sat in a chair across from them, discreetly reading a file, the picture of professional detachment. Isabel sat next to Elena, rigid and silent, a marble statue of maternal concern. Elena felt like a specimen under a microscope, her private joy now a matter of legal and financial urgency. When the technician called her name, Isabel stood. "I'm coming with you," she said simply. Elena nodded, too numb to argue. Ricardo gave her a small, encouraging smile as they left, a silent promise to be there when the ordeal was over. Inside the darkened room, the technician, a warm woman named Maria, instructed Elena to lie back. The cold gel on her stomach was a shock, and she shivered. "Just relax, honey," Maria said kindly. "Let's take a look at this little guy. Okay, good, good." The moment the transducer touched her skin and the grainy black and white image flickered onto the screen, the noise in Elena's head faded. There, on the monitor, was a miracle. A tiny, perfect spine, a heart that fluttered, a head with a well-defined nose. She could see the beating heart chambers, the flow of blood, a pulse of red and blue on the screen. "Everything looks wonderful," Maria narrated. Her voice was a soothing balm. "Here's the brain, the kidneys, a strong heartbeat at 155 a minute." Perfect. Tears ran silently down Elena's face. Not tears of pain or fear, but of overwhelming love. This was real. This active little person was her son. In this room, away from the conversations about assets and liabilities, nothing from the outside world mattered. "And would you like to know the sex?" Maria asked with a twinkle in her eye. Elena glanced at Isabel, who was staring at the screen. Her stoic facade had finally cracked. Tears were shining in her mother-in-law's eyes as well. In that shared moment, they were not a socialite and her daughter-in-law. They were just two women, a mother and a grandmother, in awe of the start of a new life. "Yes," Elena whispered. "Please." Maria moved the probe, typed in some commands, and then smiled. "Well, congratulations. Ladies' odds, you have a very healthy, very added baby boy. It's a son." Elena let out a sob that was half laugh, half cry. A boy. She could almost picture him. A miniature version of Matteo, but with a kinder heart, she hoped. Isabel reached over and squeezed her hand. It was a gesture so unexpected and so genuinely warm that it made Elena's tears flow faster. "A boy," Isabel repeated softly. Her voice broke with emotion. His father would have been so proud. She was referring to her late husband, a man whose legacy Matteo was apparently putting at risk. Once the ultrasound was complete, and Elena held a folder of glossy photos of her son, they returned to the waiting room. The joy of the past 30 minutes had armed her with a new, fragile strength. This was no longer just about her. She had a son to protect. Ricardo Morales had arranged for them to use a small, private consultation room. He closed the door behind them, and the clinical reality of their situation came rushing back. "He's perfect," Isabel said, her voice still soft, as she looked at the ultrasound photos in Elena's hand. She then looked at Ricardo. Her expression hardened with resolve. "Which is why we cannot afford to be sentimental right now." She turned to Elena. Her gaze was direct and serious. "Elena, what Ricardo and I told you in the car was only the surface. We didn't want to alarm you before your appointment, but now you need to know what we're really up against." Ricardo Morales took over. His tone was grim. "Matteo has taken out a series of high-interest, unsecured loans against the core assets of De La Riva Investments. He's done this through a series of shell companies, newly created. It's a classic move to hide debt and liabilities. The problem is that the people he's borrowing from are not reputable banks. They're private lenders who operate in the gray financial markets. They are ruthless." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "But why? The company is successful. We're rich." The word sounded naive and foolish. Even as she said it, "We were," Isabel corrected sadly. The family fortune was stable, built on decades of solid, conservative investment by my husband. Matteo, in his arrogance, thought he could do it better, faster. He has been pouring money into a series of incredibly high-risk tech projects, and from what we can deduce, they are failing. Catastrophically. He told me he was on the verge of $1 billion success," Elena whispered. The memory of his voice on the phone now sounded like a cruel joke. "He's lying," Ricardo said bluntly. "He's not on the verge of success. He's on the verge of collapse. He's running a shell game, using the family's good name and the last of his liquid capital to stay afloat, probably hoping for a miracle win to cover the losses. But the hole is too deep. We're talking about a debt that could exceed the total value of the family estate." The scope of the situation was unimaginable. It wasn't just Matteo's money. It was everything. The house, the cars, the legacy. "That's why his behavior has changed," Isabel continued. Her voice was tight with a mix of anger and sorrow. "The secrecy, the hostility, the lies. It's the behavior of a desperate man." Ricardo leaned forward slightly. "Elena, we need your help. You're his wife. You live in that house. You see him every day. Have you noticed anything else? Anything out of the ordinary? Any new names since strange meetings? Documents lying around? Even the smallest detail could help us understand the full picture of who he's involved with." Elena's mind raced, searching through months of small, dismissible moments that now seemed sinister. The way he would quickly shut his laptop when she entered the room. The personal second cell phone, which he claimed was just for international business. The nights he didn't come home at all, claiming he was sleeping in a downtown hotel to get an early start. And then a memory surfaced, something she had completely forgotten. "His office," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "At home, it's always locked. He told me not even the cleaning staff are allowed in. It's too sensitive. He calls it his strongbox." Isabel and Ricardo exchanged a meaningful look. "He has a safe in there," Elena continued. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening speed. A big, freestanding one, behind a painting. I saw it once when the door was ajar. Ricardo Morales' calm demeanor sharpened. "Does he ever open it when you're around?" "No, never," she said. The place was a black box at the center of their home, a physical manifestation of all the secrets he kept. "Helena," Ricardo said. His voice was low and serious. "We believe Matteo may be preparing to disappear. The way he's moving money isn't just to cover debts. It appears he's accumulating an escape fund. Whatever evidence there is of his plan, it will be in that safe. The implication was clear. Not only was he about to lose their money, he was planning to flee, to leave her behind to deal with the consequences. Her and her unborn son. The love she had felt in the ultrasound room curdled into a cold, hard knot of fury. The image of Matteo's charming smile was replaced by that of a liar, a coward, and a thief. "When we get home," Elena said. Her voice was steady and clear, imbued with a strength she didn't know she possessed. "I'm going to get into that office. Do you think Elena is ready to take on Matteo, or is she acting impulsively out of anger?" A house of lies returning to the mansion felt like walking into a crime scene. The sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, gleaming on the polished chrome and glass. But the light only seemed to emphasize the cold, empty soullessness of the house. The silence was no longer just unsettling. It was menacing. Isabel and Ricardo had dropped her off, making a plan to reconnect as soon as she had something to report. They had offered to stay, but Elena knew this was something she had to do alone. Invading her husband's sanctuary felt like a final, intimate betrayal, and she couldn't bear to have an audience. Her heart pounded as she stood before the solid oak door of Matteo's office. As always, it was locked. She tried the handle, a useless symbolic gesture. For years, she had respected this boundary without question, accepting it as part of the package of being married to a powerful private man. Now she saw it for what it was, a barrier to keep her from his truth. She retrieved the emergency key from the security panel, where Matteo had told her it was stored in case of fire. The irony was bitter. A fire was, in fact, raging, just not the kind that could be extinguished with water. The key slid into the lock with a quiet click. Elena pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was stale, thick with the scent of expensive leather and secrets. The room was obsessively neat. A massive obsidian desk stood in the center, its surface clear except for a sleek laptop and a photo of the two of them on their wedding day. Elena stared at the image, at her own radiant, naive smile, and felt a wave of nausea. She turned the photo frame over. Her target was the painting on the back wall, a dark, melancholic, abstract piece she had always hated. She slid it aside, revealing the flat, gray door of a large digital safe. A keypad glowed expectantly. Panic fluttered in her chest. A code. It could be anything. His birthday. Their anniversary. She tried both. Access denied. It blinked red. She tried his mother's birthday, his late father's. Nothing. She was about to give up, to call Ricardo and admit defeat, when a different date popped into her head. Not a happy anniversary, but the date that had sealed their fate. The date he had proposed to her on a yacht in Monaco. A fairy tale moment that had swept her off her feet. Her fingers trembled as she typed in the 6 digits. 081519. There was a soft whir and a loud thunk. The handle turned. The safe was open. For a moment, she just stared into the dark interior, her breath caught in her chest. It was filled with neat stacks of files, several passports from different countries that bore Matteo's photo, but different names, and thick wads of cash in various currencies. It was a corporate-scale bug-out bag. He was ready to disappear at a moment's notice. Her eyes settled on a thick manila folder, labeled with her own name. Elena de la Riva. Prenuptial agreement. Her blood ran cold. They had never signed a prenup. She was certain of it. Matteo had grandly told her that prenups were for people who didn't trust each other, that their marriage was a partnership for life, not a business merger. She had been so touched, so in love. With trembling hands, she pulled out the file. Inside was a long legal document, dozens of pages of dense, impenetrable jargon. She flipped to the last page, and there it was, her signature, scrawled in blue ink right next to Matteo's. She stared at it, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. How? When? And then a memory, blurred and insignificant at the time, came into sharp focus. It was a few weeks before the wedding, a whirlwind of planning and excitement. They were at a title company's office, signing what Matteo had called the last of the paperwork for the new house. There had been a mountain of documents. He had guided her hand, pointing out where to sign. With a pen in his hand, his smile was charming and reassuring. Just a few more signatures, my love, and it's all ours. He had slipped it in. He had buried the most important document of her life in a stack of mundane property deeds, and she had signed it without a second thought, blinded by love and trust. She sank into Matteo's leather chair, the room spinning around her, and she forced herself to read the summary page that Ricardo had probably insisted be included. It was brutal in its clarity. In the event of a divorce, she relinquished all rights to any and all of his current and future earnings, properties, and investments. She was entitled to a one-time payment of 50,000 euros and no alimony. In the eyes of this document, she was completely expendable. The entire marriage was a lie. Her role was written from the very beginning. She was not a partner. She was a temporary accessory, acquired with a clause for easy disposal. A raw, guttural sob escaped her lips. The betrayal was so deep, so complete, it felt as if it were hollowing her out from the inside. But as the initial wave of grief subsided, it was replaced by a cold, hard rage. He hadn't just lied to her. He had underestimated her. Fueled by this new fury, she reached her hands back into the safe. Her fingers brushed against something hard and slick, tucked deep behind the stacks of cash. She pulled it out. It was a small black burner phone, the kind used for untraceable communications. She pressed the power button. Miraculously, it wasn't password protected. The screen lit up, showing a string of recent text messages. The contact was only listed as L. The messages were a horrifying mix of business and intimacy. L. The final transfer is scheduled for Friday at 11 p.m. All set on your end, Matteo? Matteo. Almost. Just have to take care of one last domestic detail. The baby's room is almost finished. The theater is exhausting. Elena's blood ran cold. The baby's room. He was talking about her baby. About her as a domestic detail. A piece of theater. L. Don't get sentimental. Remember the plan. The Caymans are waiting. I can't wait to have you all to myself, away from all of this. Matteo. Soon. She has her 20-week appointment today. Perfect timing to keep her distracted. By the time she realizes I'm not coming back, we'll be ghosts. L. I booked our favorite suite. I'll wear the dress you like. Matteo. Save it for me, Lucia. Lucia. The name hit Elena with the force of a physical blow. Lucia Torres, Matteo's financial director. A sleek, hyper-intelligent Parisian woman Elena had always found intimidating, but never suspected. She had been at her wedding, had sent a lavish baby gift, and all the while had been Matteo's partner in business, in bed, and in his plan to destroy Elena's life. The phone slipped from her numb fingers and fell onto the desk. The plan was no longer a vague suspicion. It was here, in black and white. He was going to drain the company, flee the country with his mistress, and leave Elena, pregnant and destitute, to face the wreckage and the ruthless people he owed money. He wasn't just skipping a baby appointment. He was skipping her entire life, and he was taking hers with him. Elena stood. Her body was trembling not from fear, but from a chilling, absolute clarity. The grief was gone, burned away by the fire of betrayal. She picked up her own phone. She did not cry. She did not scream. She simply dialed Ricardo Morales' number. Her voice was as cold and hard as the marble floors of the house that was never her home. "Ricardo," she said, "I'm in, and I have everything. What do you think is the biggest lie Matteo told Elena? And what do you think is his biggest mistake in his plan?" A new chapter. The burner phone and the fraudulent prenuptial agreement acted as a Rosetta Stone for the chaos. The moment Elena relayed the contents to Ricardo Morales, a storm of quiet but frantic activity was unleashed. Ricardo, who had spent his career navigating the murky waters of corporate law, recognized the pattern immediately. This wasn't just a case of a failing business. It was a criminal conspiracy, carefully constructed. "He's not just running from debt, Elena," Ricardo explained during a conference call that included a stunned and furious Isabel. "He's running with the money. What you've described as a classic fraudulent bankruptcy scheme. He took full advantage of the company's good name and now plans to abscond with the last of the liquid assets before the whole rotten structure collapses on itself." Within hours, Ricardo had assembled a small, elite team. A forensic accountant named Maria Flores, a tenacious woman known for her ability to follow a digital money trail through the most complex offshore labyrinths. And a private investigator, a former police detective named Benjamin Cortez. They met in the sterile environment of Ricardo's office in the financial district, a war room where the weapons were spreadsheets and wire transfer records. Elena sat at the head of the table, not the timid, grieving wife, but the star witness for the prosecution. She recounted every detail she could remember: Matteo's travel schedules, the names of partners he had mentioned, his obsession with data encryption. Each piece of information was a breadcrumb for Maria and Benjamin to follow. Maria Flores dove into the network of shell companies Ricardo had initially identified. With the information from the burner phone, specifically the mention of a final transfer, she knew what to look for. "He'll have created a bottleneck," she explained. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, displaying dizzying columns of numbers on a large monitor. A single account where he'll aggregate the cash from all the disparate sources before sending it to an untraceable destination. It's arrogant, but he won't be able to resist the temptation of seeing the pot grow in one place before he makes his break for it. Meanwhile, Benjamin Cortez focused on the human element. Lucia Torres. He quickly pulled her profile. She was brilliant, with an impeccable resume and a quick rise in the financial world. She had joined Matteo's firm 2 years ago. To the outside world, she was his loyal, indispensable CFO. Benjamin's investigation revealed more. She had recently acquired a passport under a different name. She had also purchased in cash 2 one-way first-class tickets to the Cayman Islands, departing from a private airfield, scheduled for Friday evening. The tickets were for a Mr. and Mrs. Torres. "He's not just running away with her," Benjamin reported grimly. "He's taking on her identity. He's going to become a ghost." Just as he said, living off the money he stole under her last name, the cruelty was breathtaking. He wasn't just erasing himself. He was erasing Elena, replacing her completely with his partner in crime. Isabel, who had been listening with a face like thunder, finally spoke. "The funds he's moving, where are they from?" Maria Flores turned from her screen. Her expression was grim. "Part of it is from the high-risk loans Ricardo identified, but the bulk of it is from his investors. We're cross-referencing transfer records with the investor list. He's been running a Ponzi scheme, Isabel, a massive one." The room fell silent. A Ponzi scheme. The words were an indictment of everything the De La Riva name had once stood for. Matteo wasn't just a reckless businessman. He was a common thief on a grand scale, preying on the very people who had trusted his family for decades. He was using funds from new investors to pay fictitious dividends to older ones, creating an illusion of spectacular success while siphoning the principal capital for himself and Lucia. He's been liquidating the trust funds his father built, the real, tangible assets, and using them as seed money to give his scam legitimacy, Maria continued. He then used that reputation to pull in hundreds of millions from outside investors. Most of that money is now gone, funneled into these shell accounts. The transfer on Friday is the final step. It's all the remaining cash in the entire company. Our best estimate is he plans to transfer over 75 million euros to a Cayman Islands account. The number was so vast it was almost meaningless. Elena thought of the baby's room she had so carefully prepared, of the tiny booties on the dresser. Matteo planned to steal a fortune and start a new life, while his own son was born into a legacy of debt, shame, and criminality. The prenuptial agreement, Elena said. Her voice was hard. Can he use it to leave me with nothing? Ricardo looked at her, a glint of admiration in his eyes. He can certainly try, but it is my firm professional opinion that the document is null and void. It was signed under a fraudulent misrepresentation. You were intentionally deceived as to the nature of the document you were signing. When all of this is over, we will have it voided in court. But that is a civil matter for later. Right now, we have a criminal matter to attend to. He looked at his team. Friday at 11 p.m. That is our deadline. We have less than 48 hours to stop him. The plan was audacious and risky. They could go to the federal authorities now, but Matteo was smart. If he caught wind of the slightest investigation, he would accelerate his plan. He would disappear, and the money would be gone forever, scattered into a dozen untraceable crypto wallets and offshore banks. The investors would lose everything, and Matteo would get away with it. We have to let him think he's in control, Benjamin Cortez elaborated. We let him initiate the transfer. The moment the money moves, the moment he commits the final act of wire fraud, we have him. The FBI can freeze the funds mid-transfer before they reach the Cayman Islands bank. It's a dangerous game. It is the only way to get the money back and ensure he pays for what he has done, Ricardo stated firmly. Elena, he will be home between now and then. He will act as if nothing is wrong. He will be apologetic about missing the appointment. He will be charming. You will have to play the part of the loving, forgiving wife. Can you do that? Elena thought of the ultrasound photo in her purse, of her son swimming peacefully in the dark, oblivious to the storm raging outside. She thought of Matteo's cold voice on the phone, of the name Lucia on the burner phone screen. Don't worry, she said. Her voice was devoid of any tremble. After all, he taught me everything I know about theater. The next 36 hours were the longest of Elena's life. She existed in a state of suspended animation, an actress playing the lead role in the tragedy of her own marriage. When Matteo finally walked in the door on Thursday afternoon, he was the picture of contrition. He carried an enormous bouquet of white roses and a ridiculously expensive-looking teddy bear for the baby's room. "Hello, my love. I'm so sorry," he said. His voice was imbued with the practiced sincerity that she now recognized as his most dangerous weapon. He put his arms around her, and she had to fight every instinct to pull away. She forced herself to lean into him, to play her part. "I was so disappointed," she murmured into his shoulder. Her words were muffled. "I know, and you had every right to be. This deal was a monster, but it's done. We did it. Our future is secure forever." He pulled back, radiant. His eyes shone with a false brilliance. Now I'm all yours. No more trips, no more late nights. Just you, me, and our little guy." He had seen the ultrasound photos she had strategically left on the kitchen island. The lie was so simple, so complete, it was almost impressive. He spent the afternoon pampering her, rubbing her feet, talking about baby names, painting a beautiful picture of a future he was actively planning to detonate. Elena smiled. She nodded. She brought him his favorite whiskey. And with every passing moment, the icy resolve in her heart hardened. She was no longer just a victim of his scheme. She was the bait in the trap, set to catch him. Friday night arrived with a sense of suffocating dread and anticipation. Ricardo Sinche, Isabel, and Benjamin Cortés were staked out in an unmarked car down the street, monitoring communications with a police team on standby just minutes away. The plan was for Elena to initiate a confrontation at precisely 10:55 p.m., just as Matteo was preparing to make his final move, creating a distraction while the technical agents did their work. At 10:30 p.m., Matteo gave her a goodnight kiss. "I just have to send a few final confirmation emails to the London office, and I'll be right up," he said casually, heading to his office. Elena waited in the living room, her hands clasped around a mug of chamomile tea she couldn't drink. The silence of the house was a taut wire, ready to snap. At 10:54 p.m., her phone vibrated with a simple text from Ricardo. "Now." She took a deep breath, stood, and walked to his office. She found him sitting at his desk, his laptop open, a look of intense concentration on his face. He was so engrossed he didn't hear her come in. "Is it done?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, but clear in the silent room. He jumped, startled, and slammed the laptop shut. "Elena, you scared me. What are you doing up?" "I asked you a question," she said, walking further into the room. "Is the transfer done? Is our future secure?" A flicker of confusion, then annoyance, crossed his face. "What are you talking about? I told you I'm just finishing some emails." "Stop lying, Matteo," she said. Her voice was gaining strength. She walked to the side of the desk and picked up the wedding photo she had turned face down 2 days earlier. She held it up. Was this ever real? Or was it just part of the theater? The blood drained from his face. He stared at her. His charming mask finally fell away to reveal the cold, calculating man beneath. "What did you do?" he whispered. His eyes darted around the room as if searching for a listening device. "I did what any good business partner would do," she said. Her voice dripped with sarcasm. "I checked on our assets." She walked to the safe, which he had left unlocked, and swung the door open. She reached inside and threw the fraudulent prenuptial agreement onto the desk in front of him. Then she pulled out the burner phone and tossed it beside the prenup. "And I familiarized myself with your exit strategy." Matteo stared at the phone, then at her. His expression was a mix of disbelief and pure fury. The game was over, and he knew it. "You went through my things," he hissed, standing up. "You foolish girl, you have no idea what you've done." "No, I know exactly what I've done," Elena shot back. Her voice rose to match his. "I finally saw you for what you are, a liar, a thief, and a coward. You were going to run, Matteo. You were going to steal 75 million euros and leave your son with nothing but your shame and your debts. That money is mine," he roared. His face contorted into an ugly sneer. "I earned it. And you were just an accessory. A pretty piece of window dressing to make me look stable for the investors I was scamming. You played your part to perfection, I'll grant you that. But you were never going to be a part of the real future. That was always for Lucia." The casual cruelty of his confession took her breath away, but she refused to let him see her pain. At that moment, the office door burst open, and Isabel de la Riva walked in. Her face was a mask of cold fury. Ricardo Morales was right behind her. "Get away from her," Isabel ordered. Her voice was like ice. Matteo looked at his mother, momentarily stunned. "You're with her, against your own son? You are not the man your father raised," Isabel said. Her voice was trembling with rage and sorrow. "You are a disgrace to his name and his memory. You took advantage of our friends. You stole from your own family. And you were going to abandon your pregnant wife. You are not my son." Cornered and desperate, Matteo's rage turned violent. He lunged not for Elena, but for the desk, reaching for the laptop. "I can still fix this. I can still move the money," he yelled, trying to get past Ricardo. Ricardo, a surprisingly solid man for his age, held his ground. "It's not over until I say it's over," Matteo screamed, pushing Ricardo hard against the wall. He scrambled for the laptop, but before he could open it, the serene quiet of the mansion was broken by the sound of splintering wood as the front door burst open. Heavy footsteps thundered down the hallway, and seconds later, 2 police officers in tactical gear appeared in the doorway. "Matteo de la Riva!" one of them yelled. "You're under arrest!" Matteo froze. His hand hovered over the laptop. His face was a canvas of total defeat. The fight had gone out of him, replaced by a hollow, pathetic emptiness. His grand escape, his brilliant plan, had crumbled to dust around him. As the officers handcuffed him and read him his rights, his eyes met Elena's. There was no remorse in them, no apology, just a cold, venomous hatred. As they led him away, a broken man. Stripped of his power and his charm, Isabel wrapped a protective arm around Elena's shoulders. Elena stood tall, her hand resting on her belly, watching the architect of her pain being led out of her life forever. The gilded cage was broken. How do you think the experience of confronting Matteo will change Elena in the long run? A story of resilience. The aftermath was a media storm. "Tech magnate's Ponzi scheme collapses," the headlines screamed. The story had everything the public craved. Wealth, betrayal, a beautiful, pregnant wife, a secret mistress, and a spectacular fall from grace. For weeks, Elena's face was featured on news websites and television screens. She became a reluctant symbol, the wronged woman who brought down a titan. But behind closed doors in Ricardo Morales' office, the real work was being done. The police, thanks to the perfectly timed intervention of the team, had managed to freeze the €75 million transfer. The money was seized, destined to be painstakingly returned to the dozens of investors Matteo had defrauded. Lucia Torres was arrested at the private airfield. Her designer luggage and her dreams of a Cayman Islands paradise were confiscated. She quickly turned on Matteo, offering her testimony in exchange for a lighter sentence, detailing the cold, methodical nature of their criminal enterprise. Ricardo Morales, true to his word, filed a motion to have the prenuptial agreement voided. Armed with Elena's testimony about the deceptive signing, and Lucia's confirmation that the marriage was a calculated part of the fraud, the judge voided the document without a second thought, calling it a heinous act of coercion and deception. Elena was officially absolved of the immediate financial damages. However, there was no family fortune left to speak of. What hadn't been stolen by Matteo was swallowed by lawsuits and legal fees. The magnificent house on the hillside, the cars, the art. It was all seized and sold, pieces of a life that had never truly been real. Isabel de la Riva was a pillar of quiet strength through it all. She endured the public humiliation of her son's crimes with stoic dignity. Without hesitation, she sold her own considerable assets, her jewelry, her New York apartment, her fine art collection, things that were hers and hers alone, untouched by Matteo's ruin. She used the money to create a new, smaller trust fund, not for her, but for her grandson and his mother. "This is not charity, Elena," Isabel said firmly, as they sat in the small, sun-drenched garden of the modest but charming house she had purchased for them in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, far from the glitter and falsehood of their old life. "This is restitution. This is a family repairing the damage one of its own has done. You and this baby are my family now." The months passed in a blur of legal proceedings and healing. Elena went to therapy, learning to unpack the trauma of the profound betrayal. She learned to trust her own judgment again, to separate the man she thought she loved from the monster he had become. She learned to forgive herself for being deceived, realizing that her only crime had been to love someone who was incapable of loving her back. She and Isabel built a new kind of relationship, one forged not in social obligation, but in shared adversity and a common purpose. They painted the new baby's room together, this time in a cheerful, sunny yellow. They took walks in the park, cooked meals, talked for hours. Elena learned about Isabel's life, her dreams before she became the Mrs. de la Riva, and saw the strong, independent woman who existed beneath the Chanel suits. In turn, Isabel saw Elena not as a simple girl, but as a resilient, brave woman who had saved them all from a worse fate. One crisp autumn afternoon, Elena's water broke. The labor was long and difficult, but she was not alone. Isabel was by her side the entire time, holding her hand, breathing with her, offering a strength that was both maternal and fierce. And then, with one final push, he was there. A wave of relief and a love so powerful it eclipsed everything that had happened before washed over her. He was perfect, with a head full of dark hair and the smallest, most perfect hands she had ever seen. The nurse placed him on her chest, and Elena cried tears of joy, of release, of deep, unadulterated love. Isabel leaned in, her eyes also filled with tears, and gently stroked the baby's head. "Oh, he's beautiful, Elena. He's just beautiful. What will you name him?" she asked softly. Elena looked at her son's tiny, wrinkled face. He was not a reminder of Matteo. He was not the product of a lie. He was his own person, a blank slate, a new beginning. He was her reason to be strong, her anchor in the world. She would build their life not on a foundation of wealth and secrets, but on truth, resilience, and the unwavering love of the two women who would raise him. She smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached her eyes for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "Miguel," she said. "His name is Miguel. Do you think Elena and Isabel will ever be able to fully trust another man again? What do you think the future holds for their new family?" Elena's story is a heartbreaking reminder that the most beautiful facades can hide the darkest secrets. She thought she was living a fairy tale, only to discover that her gilded cage was built on a foundation of lies designed to break her. But what Matteo saw as weakness, her trust, her love, her focus on their future child, was in fact the source of her greatest strength. When pushed to the brink, she didn't just survive. She fought. With the unexpected help of her mother-in-law, she unraveled a massive criminal conspiracy and protected her son's future. Her journey from a deceived wife to a powerful protector shows us that true wealth isn't in mansions or bank accounts, but in courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bonds we forge in the fires of adversity.